gets off of the oxygen,
Yep.
and she's 33, 34, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
What happens after that?
At that point, once she was off of the ventilator, we were allowed to start working on feeding. Because prior to all of this, she's being fed through a tube, either in her mouth or her nose, and like hasn't tried breastfeeding, bottle feeding, nothing. So now that the stuff was out of her nose and she was able to actually eat, we were able to start working on that. So that was kind of the next phase of our NICU stay, was working on feeding.
How was that?
Didn't go very well for her. It happens with a lot of NICU babies. Those reflexes and ability to eat isn't developed, and all of the trauma that they've had with their mouth and airway makes eating like not a pleasant thing. So we definitely struggled with eating.
Yeah, she had what's called dysphagia as well. So like when we breathe air, it goes into our lungs, right? When we drink water or liquid or solid, it goes into our stomach. Her body couldn't discern the two, so her liquid would go into her lungs. So she would reject the bottle. And so she got diagnosed with dysphagia. So we had to start working with speech to help work on her, taking her bottles and stuff like that. But also the trauma on top of it, which was more kind of severe than the dysphagia, we believe. She would just reject anything going into her mouth because of the intubation and
Everything that she went through.
she's
with
got
that.
intubated 5 times, so she just don't want anything to go into her body. Yeah. So it was really hard to watch. It was really sad because she's not eating, and we're having to feed her through a tube going through her mouth or her nose.
And as a mom, I remember when my children were born and breastfeeding and latching and all those things are something that a mother wants to be able to do to her kids, and so you're not able to do that. What's going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was disappointed because I've seen where cases where the babies aren't able to eat, but I've also seen where they figure it out and it's great and mom's able to breastfeed and it's amazing. And I wanted that, but I think I also at this point had kind of shifted my perspective of like, okay, like I also wanted to have a normal birth and have her on my chest when she was born, and I think your perspective changes, and I'm just happy where we're at.
Gratitude.
Yeah.
Praise God for that.
Yeah. And
So her feeding journey, like what happens with that? How does things begin to change?
So at that point, I think the discussion started of like, okay, she's not really getting it. We're getting to like close to her due date we're in December now. And a lot of times babies go home around their due date. So the discussion came of we could either do surgery and get a G-tube and teach you how to do it all and send you home, or you could leave the NG in, which they don't often do. But I think because of my background, they were okay with it. And so that's ultimately what we decided to do, just because we wanted to see if, okay, maybe going home, would be a better atmosphere for her to learn how to eat. So we were fully set up to feed her through a NG at home.
yeah, that was crazy. I had to get like certified or like basically
learn how to
pass
do
the
it.
test to like put a tube through her nose into her stomach.
So she can go home.
It was so hard, like taking that out of her and then redoing it, just like
So you would have to do it in the hospital.
yeah. So
Yeah,
they
So you basically like, hey, we're gonna see if you can actually do this.
Yep,
We can't
yep.
send you home without.
yeah, and they rarely, or not rarely, but less frequently that they send people home with an NG tube. They typically, like Emily said, would
Because of the risks. I'm sure.
Yeah, because if it's not in the right place, it's
and if it comes
be
out at
unsafe.
home, like
You have to put it
oftentimes
back in.
you either have to put it in or go into the hospital and have them do it. And yeah, so during that time towards the end of our NICU stay is what I believe was the hardest, most challenging for us. Aria, even though she wasn't taking bottles really, she was still feeding through her NG tube. She began to develop like the worst acid reflux. Like, I mean, after she would eat
Terrible.
5 minutes later, she's projectile vomiting every
The
single
entire,
feed.
yeah.
Every feed. And it was like traumatic to watch, let alone like her go through that. She couldn't lay down. She was in our arms, no joke,
24/7.
24/7. So I would go to work all day. Emily would hold her. I would come back at night. Emily would go to work at night in the same hospital
So
because her leave was over. Yeah,
I think I
her
went back after 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So she would go to work and I would stay up all night holding Aria. You weren't really supposed to do that. I was drinking. I've never even like really drank energy drinks at this point. I was drinking Red Bulls, sitting up holding Aria because she could not lay down, or she would either freak out or vomit. And even when we would hold her, she still wouldn't hold in the food. So it was really, really tough. Like that was the hardest. I think it lasted like 2.5 weeks. What changed? What allowed it to get better? Was something took place, right? Do you remember?
We took the formula out because they had been wanting to supplement my breast milk with formula. Just because with NICU babies, they want them to gain weight at a certain speed.
And that was kind of controversial to take it out, right?
Yeah, and that was also a time where we were really kind of not butting heads with the doctors, but going back and forth because I was telling them, like, I think this is upsetting her stomach. I think this is causing all these issues. Yeah. Not to say that formula's bad, but, you know, I could tell that, that wasn't sitting well with her. And so I think towards the end, we ended up taking that out. She still gained weight perfectly fine.
Yeah. And we were expecting to go home at the end of January. And, you know, we were there for all the holidays. We were there for Thanksgiving. We were there for Christmas. We were expecting to be there for New Year's. And New Year's Eve, a different doctor was on rotation that Emily had known, not like personally outside of work, but just through work. And she kind of just believed in us in the sense of like us taking care of Aria with an NG tube. She kind of saw that we were at like this place where we're either going to stay in here for a couple more weeks and do the same thing, or we can go home. And we got the unexpected news that she's like, I think you guys can take her home.
What day was this when you guys got that news?
New Year's Eve.
No, well, we got the news that we could go home, I think probably a few days
Before, okay.
Like the 28th or something, maybe.
Yeah.
So New Year's Eve of 2022.
Yep.
You guys are about to take your daughter home.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what that was like.
It honestly, you know, I feel like you would think it would be this huge, momentous, like, we're finally going home. But it felt like we just gave birth and we're taking our baby home, like just a normal hospital delivery.
It was strange. It felt like we'll never forget the time in the NICU. And it was like just crazy. But it felt like, whoa, we just had a baby and now we get to take her home. Like it was almost like a grace that kind of washed away all the stress and everything from the last 3.5 months. We were there for 104 days. And so taking her home that day, it was just like, wow, we have our daughter, we're going home. Like this is how it was supposed to be, you know? And getting home, she was still like having really bad acid reflux. She still had her NG tube. So every time she would vomit after she ate, her NG tube would come out. So we'd have to re-put it in. It was like around the clock, just really, really tough. But we ended up making the decision closer to February that she should probably get a G tube. And that required surgery. She hadn't had surgery. And, you know, that was tough for me. Just I'm like, you know, Lord, you know, I don't want her to have to go through more. You know, we wanted that part of our life to be over. Like, I don't want this girl to go through anything.
I don't want to go back to the hospital.
Yeah, you're a parent. You don't want them to go through more now. I'm like, oh my goodness. So we felt like it was in her best interest. And Emily kind of explained to me what a G-tube was, how it worked. And yeah, so we ended up choosing that. She went through the surgery. And after the surgery, they said that babies can kind of, because of like the anesthesia, they can take a while to get their breathing back to normal. And we knew with Aria, she'd had trouble in the past. So we're supposed to just be there for that day and go home, like not even stay overnight. And it ends up turning into a 2-day stay, and Aria was on oxygen. So they had to put her on oxygen. She had to stay on oxygen. She wasn't
Nasal cannula?
Yeah, nasal cannula, but no ventilator, just oxygen. But she wasn't really coming off of it well, and so we were just like, Lord, please, like, yeah. So we ended up going home later the next day. It took her a while to re-regulate her breathing, but she finally did. We're finally able to go home. She got the G tube now, and so kind of around the clock, feeding her through a tube into her stomach. But it honestly made life easier for her. At that time, she was holding the food better.
So instead of her having to eat the food, it's
through a
going
tube in her mouth.
So she's feeding without having to go through the traumatic of filling every time.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and we would still, we're still seeing speech therapy and working on bottles, but for a long time she was strictly fed through her G tube.
Yeah, and also during the time in the NICU before, and even during the troubles with her eating, there's other diagnosis that came in. Like she was diagnosed with ROP stage 2 in both eyes. ROP is actually what caused Stevie Wonder to go blind, I believe.
He was a preemie.
Yeah, and there was no like treatment back then, so she had stage 2. Stage 2 doesn't require any treatment, but if it goes to stage 3, that's kind of when they start maybe doing like laser or like eye drops and things like that. And they stayed that way, ROP stage 2, for like 2-3 weeks, and obviously every time she would have an exam, afterwards we'd get the diagnosis, pray again, Lord, I thank you that she'll be able to see, Lord, no glasses, and he was praying for all of that, complete health. And finally, like the third time they came in, it didn't go from ROP stage 2 to stage 1. It was ROP stage 2 to nothing in both eyes. So like completely healed both of her eyes. And other things, like they diagnosed her with kidney stones in the NICU before we left. They also said that she most likely had a tethered cord, which would require spinal surgery for a child, an infant at that. And because she had fluid in her back. So leaving the NICU, we had the kidney stones and the tethered cord kind of like hanging over our head as well, on top of the eating. So after she got her G tube, we were then able to schedule an MRI for the tethered cord that would require spinal surgery because it can paralyze you, right?
Yeah.
It's like where your spinal cord is attached to your pelvis.
Yeah,
right?
so when, it doesn't matter when a baby's just kind of laying there, but once, baby starts crawling and walking, it can cause a lot of issues.
Yeah, so, we believe, Lord, we thank you that the fluid is gone, that she doesn't have a spinal cord or a tethered cord. And so we went in, got the MRI, had to put her under again, but not fully, right? Anyways, it was sad to do that again, but she got the MRI, came back, the fluid is still there. However, there's no tethered cord. So like, we're just thank you, Lord, praising God. And then later on, we had an ultrasound for the kidney stones. Lord, thank you that they're gone. Thank you that they're no longer there, in Jesus' name. Like, not that she passes them, not that they come out smoothly, not because, if you see something and it's there, they give you the diagnosis. This is what it is. You're praying that the symptoms will come out the way it's naturally supposed to. And Lord, I thank you that they're gone. When we go get this ultrasound, there would be no kidney stones. And after we got the ultrasound, during the reading, the doctor came in, said they're completely gone. So no kidney stones. She didn't pass them, anything. And we just started.
Like, what's crazy is even in talking about that, there's two different perspectives. One could say, man, like, you could borderline be in denial, right?
Yeah.
You can be denying the facts that you see. And then there's another perspective of being completely engulfed in this thing called faith, which is the evidence of things not seen. Like you're not seeing something, yet you're still believing.
Yeah.
So how do you, obviously going through this process for both of you guys, it's crazy. It's a long journey. We're talking about, most people are bringing their babies home and they're feeding them like normal and they're painting the room and, are struggling with maybe having to get up a couple times at night because the baby's not sleeping.
And that would have been us too. Like, this is the grace of the Lord. Like, we didn't have this perspective before we went through this. So, talking to other people, we're not like, oh, you don't even know what it's like, because we wouldn't have known what it was like. It was a grace period. Now we have the ability, through meeting people in the NICU, through meeting other families, like, God just graced us with so much in that time period, a different perspective. And there's things that in the future we might want to do in ministry regarding, you know, NICU babies. So
He like prepared you guys each step of the way because
Yes.
there was things, of course, your background, you know, education wise and working in hospital, and you know, you being a man of faith. And you guys had like some level of preparation, but there's a lot of things you weren't prepared for, like watching a hemorrhage. You had never seen that before.
Yeah.
So it's like the Lord was preparing you in the moment. Like in the moment, He was preparing you. And I think it just speaks so much to both of your faith and trusting God in the midst of the trial. It's Romans 5, like trials and tribulations produce perseverance. Perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. And so she's going through this entire process. What happens next? I feel like I'm on the edge of my seat. Like I know the story, but I'm like, man, this is like new to me.
No, I mean, so we're home, and it's great to be home, but it doesn't really feel like you leave the NICU because we're still feeding every 3 hours. Got to feed her through the tube, and you know, we're working on trying to eat, but it's not really working. But you know, that didn't stop us from enjoying life or getting out, or you know,
still had to work.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like life doesn't stop.
no.
Life and
did you go back to work?
I did
For a
go
little
back to
bit.
work for
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit. I'm not anymore,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah, you were
Yeah.
PRN, so
Yeah.
you're working as needed.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, but we
what was that like? When was the first time you had to go back to work and leave your baby?
not good, which is why I'm not anymore. No, I hated being away from her, and I don't know if it. I'm sure every mom, it's so hard to leave your baby, but I don't know if everything that she went through and just the fact that there's still so much going on, if that made it harder. But it was not fun.
Yeah. So in August of 2023 of last year, before her first birthday, Emily, we had kind of tried to wean Aria before. Weaning meaning like attempting to wean her from her G-tube in the sense of like seeing if she'll actually start to eat on her own. So we don't want her to just get dependent on this. And that's a really, really tough and scary decision because, you know, it's against medical practice in a sense, and it's not traditional, but we just believe that she could do it if she has the opportunity to. It's just like if someone's not hungry, they're not going to want to eat through a bottle. So she had no incentive. And so we kind of found this program, and Emily really studied it and kind of lined up everything and began to attempt to wean Aria from her G-tube. And it actually worked. Like it actually worked. I mean, we were told.
Emily, you're a rock star.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
Seriously. Seriously.
Are you
So
kidding me?
she was supposed to have her G-tube for 2 to 6 years, like minimum.
Yeah.
If there's
2 to
major,
6 years.
yeah, if there's major complications, it could be life, but that's kind of rare. But yeah, like around, and we were told by other people, not just doctors and stuff, but even family friends, and good, you know, they're meaning well, but like might not get it out till she's in grade school, and you know, this is something that you guys are doing great with it and encouraging, you know, but we're just like, Lord, like, you know, we believe she can do this. Like you created her to eat, and Emily really was a champion. Like she went through with this, and it was really difficult, but Aria was able to completely wean from her G-tube by her first birthday, which was a month later.
She was completely eating in 9 days.
Yeah.
After we started this
9
program.
days.
9 days. She went from fully 100%
Yeah.
tube fed to
How do
eating
you
by
do
mouth.
that? Like how do you know what you know from what you learned in school, what you've seen? How do you have so much confidence in God and in like how do you get to that place where you made that decision?
I think, I don't know, I feel like I could see just little like glimpses of like, oh, she can do it. Like, and I think that pushed that along, and just, you know, trusting God, trusting her, trusting my instinct of, I think this is right. And yeah, I guess so.
Come on, Mama knows best.
Yeah.
So when she completely got off of the G-tube, what was that like for you guys?
Amazing.
Well, you had a dream, right? Was it
Yes,
a dream?
yeah, I think it
Yeah.
was. I think I had a dream
Before we started to wean.
that she was taking a bottle on her first birthday.
That she was So her dream was that she was on the couch drinking a bottle, holding it herself on her first birthday. And, you know, we're like, that's like a month and a half away.
Yeah.
And our minds were thinking like, what? So then a week later, Emma was like, hey, I'm going to try this again. Not with the dream in mind necessarily, but I think she can do it. By her first birthday, she was completely taking a bottle by herself. So we got to share that news with everybody at the birthday party that she was weaned from her G-tube. And so that kind of led up until this February of 2024. We went for a checkup because basically after the time that you wean from the G-tube, basically there needs to be like 3 to 6 months of not using it.
Before doctors will even consider removing it. Just because they would hate to take it out and then
Her need it again.
Yeah.
So, you know, and they also wanted you to get through the 6th season, you know, in the winter months. So Aria had gotten through that. We took her to Jamaica in December of 2023, which was a blast. And she made it through that. She had a cough at some point and it lasted quite a while, but she didn't have to revert back to the G-tube. She was still able to receive enough liquids on her own. And so we just believed that she was ready. And so we kind of went and shared this with a doctor. And, you know, they were kind of like, are you sure? Like, maybe we'll just wait till the next checkup in a couple more months. We're like, we think she's ready. Like, here's all the proof. And they're like, okay, we'll take it out right now. So in February, Aria got completely medically cleared of every single diagnosis that she had had. Yeah. She's healthy. She's at home. She's getting big. And, yeah.
So she went from being born at 27 weeks old to, how old is she now?
19 months.
19
Yeah.
months.
Yeah.
Living life.
Yep.
Thriving.
Thriving.
G2,
No, nothing.
no nothing.
Nothing. You would never know. All she's got is a scar on her stomach from the G-tube.
And she be giving scars out to her parents.
Yes, she does. That's right. Toddlerhood.
It's incredible, man. Just to not only know you guys and to know your journey in the Lord and just getting to this place of trusting Him despite what man might try to give you. You know, the Bible says there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. At any point in your journey, and I know everybody who had given you advice along the way were well-meaning people that was backed by science or backed by what they thought was best. But I mean, this just goes to show moms and dads, God has positioned you guys for such a time as this. And He looked down the quarters of time and knew that you guys were going to walk through this. He knew this was going to happen, and you guys were prepared for it, and you trusted Him along the way.
Yeah.
So what has that done for not only your relationship with God, but your relationship with each other and just your perspective on life? Because I think you've got some news that you guys might want to share with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are expecting our second.
Yeah.
I'm actually 26 weeks and a few days right now. And it's definitely been, you know, I feel great, and there hasn't been an ounce of, you know, this is going to happen again, and this is, you know, and you can't predict the future, but I trust that, you know, God's got us, and even if it happened again, you know, He's good, and we got through it before.
Yeah, I think that right there is the key, you know, because you believe you're ready that it won't anymore, but it's like, even if we've been through this, and then you would never want to go through that again, but just instead of the perspective of I don't ever want to go through that again, being fear, you've taken us through before. But we're not believing for that. You know, of course, we're believing for a healthy pregnancy that Emily would get to experience, what she's always dreamed of, being a mother and birthing naturally. And that's just what we're praying for and believing for. She's obviously more high risk, so we've had a lot more of appointments. I feel like we haven't stopped going to the doctor for the last a year and a half or more. So, but she's healthy. There's been some miracles in this pregnancy already, and yeah.
So in closing, if somebody listens to this podcast that might be in the very beginning of what you guys walked through when Aria was 27 weeks old, what would you tell them?
Want me to go? I would say, hearing a story like this, don't compare yourself to other people. Your journey, your situation is where you're at. You know, like I wouldn't have been prepared for what happened with Aria if certain things hadn't taken place beforehand. It's all the Lord. So do everything according to your faith. Don't, because you heard someone say, don't do this or don't go to the doctor, don't just go ahead and do that. Like, pray, ask the Lord what, you know, he wants you to do, and do it according to your faith. But do it according to your faith, you know, believe God, and, you know, trust him. And I would say that in the midst of the storm, you know, our number one calling, if you're a Christian, is to shine. And I think that we did our best to do that even in the NICU, whether it was janitors coming in or the room next door with the parents in there. There's testimonies, you know, of people's lives that were also touched just through our demeanor and our, you know, shining as a light in the midst of what we were going through. And I think that you have to understand your sphere of influence, and God didn't just put us in the NICU just to covet our daughter and to only worry about her. There's other babies in there that needed prayer. There's other babies in there that might not have made it out, you know? And so, like, truly, like, having a bigger perspective than just you. So that was kind of been my number one prayer since Aria was born. If it's your first time having kids, don't covet them. You know, it's a gift that we get to steward. So I would just lay my hands on the incubator and say, like, Lord, I thank you that she's yours. I thank you that she's not ours. Like, let us steward this gift that you've given us and believe you for her, you know, and I pray that she'll appreciate that one day. Yeah.
Emily, what would you say to a mom that might be going through this?
Don't give up. It might look like everything's, keep crying, gosh.
Ooh, I won't cry.
You know, it might look like everything's going wrong and there's nothing you can do, but don't give up.
Well, you guys are an absolute blessing to everybody that knows you, and we love baby Aria. We still call her baby Aria every night. We pray for her.
You'll be 20 and you say baby Aria?
We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for...
We want to say thank you to you and Chelsea and your family and all the people, all our family and friends that have supported us. And you guys started a GoFundMe for us since we were off work at that time, and everything that we were going through, and, you know, raised like $5,000, man. That touched us and blessed us. Hot meals.
We love you guys, man. We do it again. You guys are family.
Thank you so much.
Just appreciate you guys and your transparency with your journey. I just believe that God is going to not only use this podcast, but he's going to use your story in a profound way to impact so many lives. So thank you guys for being on today.
Yeah, thank you.